Well, 5 might have been optimistic. It's loading. Okay, you're ready.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I will now call this special meeting of the Fayette County Board of Education to order. This is our regularly scheduled planning session of the Board of Education. This meeting will be held via video conference and is being live streamed at fcps.net/virtual meeting for members of our public who would like to tune into it remotely. Pursuant to KRS 61.826, Section 2, subsection B, there is also a designated primary location where members of the public may view the video conference at the John D. Price Building, 450 Park Place, room 159. At this time, Ms. Daly, good evening. Would you please take roll?
Good evening. Miss Amy Green.
Present.
Mr. Tom Jones.
Present.
Miss Christy Morris. Mr. Tyler Murphy.
Present.
Miss Stephanie Spires.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Daly. And Board Member Morris is traveling and is unable to join us this evening. But I'd like to welcome everyone joining us for tonight's meeting, whether you're tuning in virtually or watching at 450 Park Place. Our planning work session is an opportunity to review the agenda for our action meeting later in the month and to allow time for extended presentations and discussions. And if you're looking for extended presentations and discussions, tonight will not disappoint. So during the summer, we do not have a teacher, student, and classified employee representative, but we will pick up that practice when school resumes in August. And at this time, I will turn the agenda over to Mr. Myron Thompson to lead us through our action meeting agenda. Mr. Thompson's filling in for Acting Superintendent Dr. Helm, who's also having some technical issues. So Mr. Thompson, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Murphy. And before I go over our agenda for this month, I would like to add my own welcome to any members of the public who are joining us for tonight's meeting. At our action meeting on June 28th, we will have the reading of the mission statement led by Board Member Tom Jones, followed by the Superintendent's report. Our first item under the Superintendent's report this evening is an update on our first week of Summer Ignite. And at this time, I'd like to invite our Associate Director of Title I, Ms. Mindy Mills, to tell us about exciting things happening. Mindy?
All right, good evening. First of all, I'm glad to hear some of you, Stephanie, and others who have having a positive experience, and we think it's really going great. And Mr. Carty, I'll just ask you to queue up our video that we made of the first week, and then we can take some questions after we see this.
Where heroes come to learn and play. We're cooking up some new ideas. Where our days are so fun they don't seem real. Where we're going after our black belt and learning. Where we keep our minds growing.
We know that students love being at Summer Ignite because they are so excited to be here every single day. They can't wait to see their teachers and they can't wait to see what's going to happen in their classes today.
I'm having a really fun time at Summer Night.
The staff is doing a great job engaging the students, bringing just really creative activities and hands-on opportunities.
My favorite activity has been the people coming in teaching us how to do certain things like paramedics.
The purpose of Summer Ignite is to allow students to learn and grow and be around other students and learn in ways they never thought they would be able to experience.
I'm having fun. It's really fun. I can meet new people. The classes are fun, and I'm in a play, and it's my first time.
Our students are learning to dance into the future. Summer Night.
All right, guys. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to entertain those, but we just felt like that was the best way to kind of present to you some things that happened during week one. Throughout that video, you saw elementary, middle school, and some high school kids. So it's going great.
Any questions?
I'm just so excited that we're offering these opportunities. I wish I could go to school right now. So I'm really excited, and I'll echo Ms. Spires. You know, I've heard great things in the community. Other little kids have told me they were sad that they were on the wait list, you know, and then the other neighborhood kids are coming home and teaching those kids things. So I really appreciate the hard work. I think it's going to have a ripple effect through the community. So thank you.
I think so as well, and I appreciate those comments. And we, you know, all of last week and even starting today, we have schools are telling me they have people calling, wanting to know if they can get in for session 2. So we're trying to make that happen as much as we possibly can. And then, as you know, session 3 is that transition session for incoming Ks and 6th and 9th, and we're definitely still enrolling for that session because it's a ways out still.
Are some of the schools for session 3 just doing one day? That is one thing I've heard.
Yeah, some schools have blank on a word, have organized it or done it a little bit differently. Our high schools, especially, you know, our larger high schools, when they talk about, you know, 800 freshmen or 700 freshmen, for them all to come in. So they have split it up by days. We've talked to them that we know transportation will be an issue, and some of our elementaries, a lot of their families have said, no problem, we'll be car riders that week, so that maybe half of the students come on Monday and Tuesday, and then the other half are coming on Thursday, Friday, just so they could have a little bit smaller groups and make that work. So I think their goal is to still get as many of them as they can, even if it's not for 5 full days.
Thank you, Ms. Mills. And I think one of the things that's important to underscore, and that we saw in the video too, is that this is not just, it's not quote unquote summer school. It's not just about remediation.
No.
That there's a lot of creative things happening. Students are being engaged and they're active in their learning, as we saw in the video. So it's not just what we would traditionally think of as quote unquote summer school. It's very much an enrichment experience as well.
Absolutely. And I even had a coordinator tell me on Friday that he had a little boy say, so when are we going to start learning? You know, and that's really what it's about. We want them to be engaged and having fun, and then be ignited to come back to school in August, right? So.
Thank you.
Great job, Mindy. Board Chair Murphy and board team, I believe Dr. Helm is back in the saddle, so I'm going to bow out and let her step up to the plate. So.
Thank you,
Thank you for stepping in.
Thank you, Myron. I really appreciate that. And thank you, Mindy, and all of the individuals that have worked so hard to ensure that Summer Ignite got off to a great start. And I know we will have lots more information to look forward to. So thank you very much. Our next item under the superintendent's report is our quarterly report on what's commonly referred to as the CDIP, our Comprehensive District Improvement Plan. And I will turn it over to our Chief Academic Officer, Kate. May I share that?
Thank you, Dr. Helm. Good evening, and board members, I hope you'll join us at some point in either this week or next week into one of our schools to see Summer Ignite in action if you haven't gotten out yet. And we'll be glad to help arrange that. Just let us know, because it's really exciting times in our schools this summer. Mr. Carty, if you'll share the PowerPoint presentation, we'll walk through our June quarterly report on CDIP.
Could somebody send me a link to that very quickly?
I did, yes.
Just about there. You know, you think you have everything set up and you've got your PowerPoint all ready and your computer all anteed up, and then you get silence. It's happened to us all. So Kate, the Comprehensive District Improvement Plan, we have 4 updates annually, and this is update number 2.
Right, this is our second report. We'll start with goal 1. That is our proficiency goal on reading and mathematics.
So any adjustment to this plan based on this year that we've had? Here it is. Thank you,
And
Dave.
go ahead and switch over to the third. Keep going, Mr. Carty. So there's our proficiency goal. It remains the same. It was established as a 2-year goal. And we'll move to the next slides to give you an update, board members. The proficiency goal has 6 or 7, there's 6 showing here, and there's another one on the next slide, activities, and you can see that they are all moving forward in the yellow stage of at the partial implementation level. We did have ongoing training for several of these activities. We are creating a comprehensive literacy guidance document. There has been some school leadership involvement with learning more about implicit bias and ongoing training on the literacy core reading beliefs. And if you'll flip to the next slide, these are the last 2 of goal 1 on proficiency. And in June, we are working on continuous improvement process, and we can say that our walkthrough tool has been revised and shared and completed. So we do have one activity there in particular at the fully implementation stage. Moving next to the separate academic indicator, this is our science, social studies, and writing our goals for those 3 content areas. And again, those, you know, basically are established for 2 years. We'll move next to the next slide to give you an update, board members. We do have 221 or 22.A in now fully implemented green stage. Our social studies specialist has been, position has been filled, and we will be providing you some future information on social studies curriculum, unit frameworks, and those pacing guide revisions. In June for 213B through 213E that you can see there, we are, excuse me, we are moving forward. We are still in the partial implementation stage on PLC development. The last 2 there that you can see on the slide involve work with our middle school cadres of principals on the clarity for learning embedded with that instructional process, as well as with district-wide assessments. And the next slide continues into our third goal, which is on growth. And you will see that in, next slide, please. The growth is continuing forward with partial implementation. So some things have been completed, but we will see continuation. We will see continuation because of the pandemic. Some of our common assessments and other activities here are at a partial implementation stage. We do have some tools that have been developed and will be fully implemented in the upcoming school year for growth. And then on the next slide is the last two with a good update on Imagine Learning. You can see we've really updated or increased our number of students engaged with it in Imagine Learning. That's on 3.1F. And then also our special ed department is seeing continued professional learning growth there with their staff. The next slide is 3.2A through 3.2D and accelerated learning resources and common assessments. So we're looking more at Navigator on our website on support services for our teachers. You'll see also that we are continuing to move forward with more accelerated learning occurring for SLI. That'll be coming up next month, board members, in July. We do have a map data report coming to you tonight and some additional information about map growth. In the very last,
in the Leadership Institute, just to clarify.
And the SLI is the Superintendent Leadership Institute. Yes, thank you. And then the last side is again about Imagine, in the Imagine Learning platform, there's Imagine Math, and you can see that we do have some numbers to share with you on number of schools and students utilizing that tool. And we'll move now to the achievement gap. And again, those goals have remained the same throughout the year and will be updated next year after results come back. And so we'll look at those to see how we're doing on the achievement gap. And the next slide, please. So you will see that we do have some information to share about map data. Professional learning did occur and is continuing to occur on cultural responsive leadership and inclusion practices. That is continuous. We do have a green here where all four of the what I call modules or tenets in the district-wide equity initiative have been provided to all of the district leadership, shared by a very wide range of presenters. And that professional learning also had moved into some information sharing from the chiefs on courageous conversations, instructional design, delivery, and implementation. So that is now at fully implemented in green. We did see a decrease in incidents in March and June in terms of the in-school suspension and out-of-school suspension data. Next slide. And this is for 2A, B, and C. And again, this is about our African-American males and students with disability. Growth did occur. We will share more about the map data, board members, momentarily. And then there was a specific information about Module 4, which was our most recent learning experience during DLM. And then again, some additional data on those particular student groups. Moving on to our transition readiness goal, and we'll shift to those particular activities. On the next slide, we did end the year with 3,977 students enrolled in either AP, IB, or dual credit courses for the year. EOP tests were only given to our 12th graders this year, and we did have a 68% pass rate.
What is EOP?
End of the program.
End of program, I believe that the word is end of program test from the CTE courses, Ms. Green.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I try to stop as soon as I don't catch one. I couldn't.
Yeah,
figure that
and
one out.
I will make sure that we start spelling. I think we just ran short on some space, so we did, abbreviate some things.
And education's an alphabet soup of acronyms.
Yeah. And then, of course, we had quite a bit of professional development earlier this school year with our CTE teachers, and they had their own summit within the district, and it was great professional learning. And we will have to wait until after we get our final report from KDE to share more with you about 5.1D. And the last two here on transition readiness, the coaches are meeting regularly and have worked to provide that support, even though most of the year was in a virtual setting, and did have a big push on helping our seniors in particular to fill out that FAFSA form. And then finally, there is earlier this month, there was an academy retreat, and they are working to set up some support and additional retreat for students later, right before school starts. And then finally, graduation rate. We'll move that to those activities on the next slide. So they're continuing to support our students, our high schools and programs in Summer Ignite. And please know our graduation rates will be finalized after Summer Ignite, and of course, after KDE finalizes the data. And next steps, you'll see that the continuous progress on CDIP activities will continue. We do conduct monthly reviews during our ELT or executive leadership team meetings. And I will be back with you board members in September to give you another report. And we should have all of that data back from KDE by that point, or at least most of it. Any questions? Be glad to entertain questions.
Okay.
What data will you have back from KDE?
I think we will. I think we unless there's a holdup, I think we should have at least that graduation and transition readiness data. The results from the modified shortened version of our state assessment system usually comes out towards the end of September.
Right.
So I don't know, since it was a shorter test this year for our children, Mr. Jones, I don't know if they'll have it ready sooner or not. But we've not been told yet.
On 6.1C ROIS training, and what does ROIS stand for?
It's a return. I believe it's and someone can correct me, but I believe it's return on investment strategy system. And Carl?
Yes, it's the return on. Hello, Carl Hayden here. It's the return on investment system. It is a progress monitoring system developed to help schools look at various indicators and data points on their individual students.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
I have one more question and then I'll stop. There are several places in here where you talked about training being provided. Training provided to principals in this case, but there were other instances where you talked about training being provided. So the improvement plan just simply says that the training will be provided. Is that all it says?
Can you tell me which particular activity?
I'm looking at 6.1C, that we're going to provide training and return on investment strategies. So the improvement plan just calls for that training to be provided.
On 6.1C, it also includes analyzing behavior data, if I'm reading the same one that you are.
So in the earlier in the spring, we set up training for, yes, we set up training for the principals and their admin team, whoever were interested, and efforts to teach them how to pull their Royce data in addition to analyze it, and the next steps to implement plans based off of what they see from their data.
Yes.
So,
I'm sorry, could you repeat that about next steps?
Are you
Sure. So it's not only a session on how to put together data. Yes, it's also an opportunity for us to be able to work with the schools to talk with them about different plans and strategies to implement based off of what their data tells them. For example, we talk with schools on looking at 12th grade, let's say 12th grade English failures, for example, because we know how important it is for that 12th grade English.
Carl, you're fading out. We're not
equipped at the school level to try to be printing their data.
Carl, we're not able to really hear you. You're like I was a little while ago. Your connection is unstable, I think.
Mr. Jones, if I may, Dr. Helm, Mr. Jones, in March, they did, the report was that they did receive training. And then in June, they actually were able to identify students because they had received the training through the use of the Royce in order to support positive behavior. That was the June report, if I'm reading 61C correctly, like what I see here.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome. Thank you, Board Member Jones. And any other questions?
Any other questions, board members?
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan.
All right. Kate mentioned that you would be getting some information about our spring testing, our spring map testing. And so Dr. Brooke Stinson is with us next to give us that information.
Thank you. Good evening, board members and Dr. Helm. I'm presenting information to you this evening about our district benchmark data map. There will be several tables with a lot of numbers to digest and reflect on. So if we could wait to the very end after I share all the data with you, and then we can see about questions. Our focus this evening will be on our Universal Screener MAP. MAP is short for an acronym called Measures of Academic Progress. MAP is an assessment that measures what a student knows and is ready to learn. Using this data, it informs our standard-based core instruction and enhances clarity around teaching and learning. Mr. Carty, next slide, please. Measures of Academic Progress, also known as MAP, is a computerized adaptive assessment program that provides schools with information they need to improve on teaching and learning. MAP, like I shared earlier, is a universal screener. It adjusts to a student's skill level so that each student takes an individualized test. It generates test questions based on their responses. MAP also gives immediate results. It measures growth over time, provides information used to target individual instruction, and provides teachers and parents with information about skills students know, their current learning, and even next steps for future instruction. So MAP being our universal screener, that support as an assessment shows schools that all students receive high quality evidence-based instruction aligned to grade level standards. In a sustainable system, at least 80% of our students have their needs met through this universal level of support. Since student MAP testing results are reported in RIT scores, short for Rosh unit, and a RIT score is an estimation of a student's instructional level and also measures student progress in school. RIT scores are established by national norms and produced by the Northwest Evaluation Association, also known as NWEA. We'll also look at percentiles this evening, and percentiles measure how well a student performs in comparison to others at the same grade level. It expresses how a student's achievement at a single point in time is compared to those national norms. Our students in kindergarten through 8th grade and a limited scope of students in high school level take MAP assessment 2 to 3 times a year. This past year in 2020-2021 school year, our schools administered MAP during the fall and winter testing window remotely and spring test at school. Next slide, please. It is important to understand the MAP test is one test at one point in time. MAP shows that this is what students are ready to learn. It allows us to determine if a student is performing at, above, or grade level compared to students across the district and nation. When making these important decisions, about our students, our schools consider MAP data along with classroom performance, anecdotal notes, formative assessments, and other summative assessments. This table here represents kindergarten students that test results show that in the spring 2021, they tested both reading and math. Our average number of students in kindergarten shows 2,418 with an average RIT score of 157 in reading, 4 RIT points above the national norm, and 161 in math, 4 RIT points as well above the national norm level. Both spring test scores were above the national norm set by NWEA. Next slide, please. This table shows a comparison. Slide 4. Okay, thank you. This table shows a comparison on how our kindergarten students performed prior to COVID as well as this past year. The pre-COVID years were from 2016, 2017, 2017, 2018, 2018 to 2019 school years. This longitudinal data was averaged and compared to the past year with COVID. Along with these RIT scores, a column was added to show the average number of kindergarten students we have. In our district, we have to average approximately 3,000 students per grade level. This table also shows that kindergarten as a group scored 183 RIT in reading, 165 RIT in math during those pre-COVID years versus a 157 RIT in reading during COVID and 161 in math. Both of these RITs in this past year showed a decrease. Next slide, please. This next table shows that our students in grades 1st through 8th performed over the last school year in reading and math. The first column shows grade level. Second column shows the reading national norms that were established this past summer per grade level. And the third column shows how our students scored in reading. Fourth column shows math national norms. And the last column also shows how students scored based on those math norms. As you can see, our students scored above the national norm in reading. In math, grades 1st, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th showed a RIT score above the national norm. Next slide, please. We didn't complete MAP in spring of 2020 due to the pandemic. The Assessment Literacy Department did an excellent job in training and supporting our schools and how to administer MAP remotely. Our schools administered MAP remotely in fall and winter test windows. This particular table shows how our students compared to their reading RIT levels pre-COVID versus COVID. Again, those pre-COVID years represent the longitudinal data from 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019. Along with the average RIT for the pre-COVID years, a column was added to show the number of students in grade level compared to our current year. These numbers show completed MAP scores. With these RIT scores, our scores and number of students completing the MAP assessment showed an overall decrease, yet at some grade levels were very close to the national norm. If we look at the first row with first grade, we averaged 2,941 students during our pre-COVID years with a RIT of 183. During this past year, first grade averaged 2,740 students, approximately 200 less students with a reading RIT of 172. Next slide, please. This table shows how our students compared their math RIT levels pre-COVID versus COVID. There was a decrease in RIT scores and a number of students completing the MAP assessment across the district. Again, if we look at the first row with first grade, we averaged 2,941 students during our pre-COVID years with a MAP RIT of 186. During this past year, first grade averaged 2,740 students, approximately 200, again, less students with a MAP RIT of 177. Next slide. So as we transition from RIT scores to percentiles, in order to understand how well a student performed on a test, a student's RIT score is compared to all other results from students in that same grade or the same grade. This measurement is called a percentile. In Kentucky, the proficiency is typically the 60th percentile, and our nationally normed RIT scores are at the 50th percentile. In other words, Kentucky's standard for proficiency is a little higher than where we are nationally and where we typically land in achievement. As far as growth percentiles, the 50th percentile is what we call maintenance growth. Anything below can cause a drop in achievement over time. And of course, anything above is going to result in achievement increasing over time. Next slide, please. This data on this particular table shows that kindergarten was only required to take MAP in winter and spring. When kindergartners come to school in the fall, they're assessed with several different data points, one being the Brigance Kindergarten Screener, which is a state requirement. We don't require them to test in the fall. With MAP, however, some schools go ahead and administer it to their kindergarten students. As you can see on this table, there was a decrease in percentiles by the cohort of the students during the longitudinal data during pre-COVID and COVID. Our kindergarten students as a group scored in the 81st percentile in reading compared to the 98th, 99th, and 99th percentile during COVID. In math, our students scored in the 85th percentile in comparison to the 93rd, 97th, and 98th during pre-COVID. Next slide, please. This table shows reading percentiles and how our students in grades 1st through 8 performed during those years. Again, if we look at the first grade in the first row, we averaged 2,941 students with percentiles in reading in 2017 in the 96th percentile, 96th percentile in 2018, and 99th percentile in 2019. During the past year, we averaged, again, 2,740 students at the 54th percentile in reading. This was a decrease across all grade levels by percentile in reading. The table shows a larger decrease in grades 1st through 5th. However, if you look at middle school grades, their decrease is not as severe. Next slide, please. And lastly, we're going to look at the math percentiles and how our students in grades 1st through 8 performed prior to COVID as well as this past year. The pre-COVID years, of course, were 2016, 2017, 2018, 2017, 2018, 2018, 2019. The longitudinal data again was averaged and compared to this last year. The math percentiles on this table show a decrease across the district. If we look again at first grade in that first row, we averaged students, a little under 3,000 students in reading in 2017 with the 94th percentile, 94th percentile in 2018, 99th percentile in 2019. During this past year, we averaged the 54th percentile in reading. The MAP assessment, again, is our universal indicator on what students are learning. Our students, we do know that they were learning this past year. We know that our teachers were teaching. These percentiles do not necessarily show the growth we normally see in a typical year. Next slide, please. I've shared a lot of data with you this evening and several tables that compare our pre-COVID school year versus our past year. As an interim assessment with MAP, it does monitor our school progress towards larger term goals, inform school improvement plans. This data also informs our instructional practice across the district. Principals and schools have been using this data to complete their ESSER plans, create systematic changes to instruction, and support for students' needs this next year as well as that robust Summer Ignite program. What questions can I answer this evening based on this data?
Any questions, board members?
I have a couple of questions, but I don't want to, if somebody else wants to ask a question, I don't want to be the first.
Go ahead, Mr. Jones.
When you talk about, I'm looking at the slide, I don't have the numbers, but it's one of the last, it's the one right above the question slide. So from what I'm understanding, that 2,941, that's the average number of students in the first grade that took the test, averaging out the 2016, 17, and 18 school year. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
So that number was going to go up and down. And then the math score for 2017, that's 94, and that's a percentile.
Yes, it is. We began talking about red, and then we transitioned right to percentiles.
And that's the average for Fayette County first graders.
Yes, that is the percentile as a cohort, as a first grade group scored on MAP at the end of that year.
And we see the same thing for 18 and for 19.
Yes, you are correct.
So the percentile, I guess I'm not clear about what percentile means here. So does that mean that only 6% of the students in Fayette County were not performing at grade level?
Basically what it tells us is that as that cohort, that particular group was scoring at such a high level by the end. So this was the last thing that our kindergarten students took that particular year. So they're scoring 94% higher than everyone else across the nation. It's a national norm percentile.
And then second grade, it drops to 75. That's a pretty significant drop from first to second. And then third grade, it stays the same, fourth grade, the same, fifth, it goes back up. But then in sixth grade, I mean, if you look at the difference between 94 and 61, that's a 30-point drop, right? Yeah. I'm just making sure I understand what this data is saying.
Yes, and those are different groups of students. So every year, I mean, that's a different group of students that's tracking their performance, their growth over time. And so, yes, I do see those significant drops. You definitely are correct, but those are different students over time.
Okay, but it's roughly 3,000 kids.
Yes, we roughly average approximately 3,000 students per grade level.
Right. Okay. So this data that you're sharing with us does not show us whether or not we're having any impact in terms of equalizing student outcomes. Do you have any data that would give us some indication as to the degree to which we have been able to equalize outcomes among children based on ethnicity and socioeconomic and that sort of thing?
Yes, sir, we definitely do. I mean, the MAP data does break it down by academic programs, by our diverse groups. So if that's the wish of the board, I'd be happy to share that based on our different, different groups. I'd be happy to.
Well, I would be interested in knowing if the district has had any success during the pandemic in trying to close gaps. I would be very surprised if they had. I think it would be very difficult. But I'd also like to know whether or not the achievement gap that we've been talking about for so long in Fayette County has worsened during the pandemic. I think the board would benefit from knowing that. So I would like that. I'm guessing that the rest of the board would as well.
Definitely, board member Jones, I'd be happy to get that for you as soon as possible. We have that information. Again, this was just all students, but I would definitely be happy to break it down into our different groups of students, plus even by program as well. Even EL, special education, whatever the board wishes, I'll be happy to get that to you as soon as possible.
Well, it would be the subpopulations that we're concerned about, which has been ethnicity. Mm-hmm. It's been socioeconomic, and it's been special needs.
I'll be happy to get that for you.
Is there anything else that I'm missing, board members? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Jones. Dr. Stinson, one thing for clarification on interpreting the MAP data. So on the one hand, we have the longitudinal comparisons, right, which are comparing different cohorts. And then we also have the fall to spring growth, right? So is it fair to say that although we didn't see as much growth as we would typically see from fall to spring, there was growth across grade levels from fall 2020 to spring 2021? Is that correct?
Yes, board member. That's definitely a fair comment. We definitely, students were learning, teachers were teaching. We have growth at every grade level. We're not seeing our typical growth we normally see by these cohorts. But yes, you are accurate on that reflection that our students definitely grew this year. We just don't have the growth that we typically have, but we definitely did.
Okay, thank you.
And just to kind of echo, we've talked about this before in the recent weeks, and this is by no means data driven like the MAP test. But I think several of us board members have talked to teachers and have talked to staff. And I think that overall, our staff is pleasantly surprised with the growth of our students, and that it's not what they, that it's students are doing better than maybe some of us adults anticipated they'd be doing. And that, I think what I hear from teachers is really positive. Like, even though we are still have room to grow, to catch up, I'm not hearing from teachers, we're not going to catch up. I'm hearing we are on the right track. We will make up this loss. We are working together. And the students did grow. Like you said, they did not grow what they've typically grown, but there was still learning, and there was learning outside of what math testing takes as well. So, I hear from parents, my kids know how to make a lunch. My kids know how to make a breakfast. My kids know how to go from a Zoom to a this, to a that. So my kids cook, my kids, so I think, and that's the stuff that's not measured. So our kids were learning, they were learning differently when it comes to our reading and our math, which are important. They did grow, but not the way that they've typically grown. But at the same time, they are growing, and we need to celebrate that growth and continue to look at ways to keep them on track and continue to grow until they reach their potential.
Definitely. There's so many celebrations that we can share on the wonderful things we're doing in our district. But I believe you're right, Board Member Spires, that how we learned this last year may not have been our typical learning as far as what reading and math are showing us, but everything else and that whole child and what we're representing. Along with map data being our universal screener, we have other data that shows how we're doing with the standards as well. Galileo, we're in the first year of implementation of Galileo. That's standard base. I mean, we've done an amazing job across the district in K-8, as far as with Galileo and what our standards are telling us. So lots of data to share. I'd be more than happy to share Galileo down the road with you all, but definitely getting what Board Member Jones has requested, I can get that to you as soon as possible.
Well, no, I would be very interested in any other district-wide student assessment data that can give me, and I'm sure the other board members, an indication of how our students are doing academically, especially in light of the pandemic. So Galileo would be one. Are there others?
Well, Galileo and MAP are really our two biggest district assessments that we do district-wide, but it'd be nice to even, I'm sorry, excuse me. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, you go ahead.
No, I think those also give a different purpose. MAP is that universal screener. It tells us where our students are ready to learn that particular day. The Galileo is standard base. It tells us exactly how our students are learning and what they're ready to learn within those standards. I can definitely get you a broader picture of where our students are at. Of course, limited state data, like Ms. McAnally shared with you a little earlier, it'll be limited this fall, what we get. However, it'll be a nice way to see where our students were at, the students that did take K-Prep, for example, or Access or ACT. We will also have that data to present to you.
I think one thing too, though, that we need to remember about, especially Galileo, is not only was this our first year of implementation, but our parents are who implemented it first. Yes. And as a parent who implemented Galileo, I think, there were a lot of hiccups by teachers and hiccups by, we were all implementing a new assessment together at the same time. So I'm interested to see that feedback, but I do think, and I think Ms. Green's kind of smiling too, because she also did Galileo. So, we know that there were some hiccups with that first implementation back and like you said, it's a little different because I think what was frustrating for kids is it was hard for some of the kids couldn't read the content and couldn't, and they're not in their classroom. And it's hard for a parent to say, I can't read this to you. You just have to hit an answer or something to move forward. And so, because it was trying to see what do you know now? And so it was harder. But I know that it was frustrating, I think, for parents and teachers and all to implement a new assessment in the fall. I think it was also one of those days that the town's internet was not, it was like one of those weeks where the internet wasn't working for lots of people. And but anyway, so I just want to make sure that all the board members kind of know that there was some hiccups with the implementation in the fall as well.
And to do it remotely. I mean, that also was something that our department, assessment literacy, trained all schools, because we're so used to giving things in person. All of a sudden we had to administer these brand new assessments remotely, and they did an amazing job to support them.
And Chair Murphy, one thing I just wanted to make sure that the community understands is that we don't solely wait for the state assessments to look at CDIP, right? We use all of these different data points. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I've had people reach out and say, well, you guys didn't test, so how do you know if you're growing or not? But we use all of these measures going forward, and we can always assess and make sure that we're growing, or in areas that we also need to grow.
Excellent.
And absolutely, and to that point, Board Member Green as well, and we've talked about this before. There are the formal, the substantive type of assessments that we're talking about here. Of course, we waived common assessments for this year, but the standardized assessments like MAP. But there's also teachers are constantly assessing, right? That's what teachers are trained to do, and that a lot of the anecdotal evidence that we've heard that Board Member Spires referenced, a lot of that comes from the formative, as we call it, assessments that teachers are doing on an ongoing basis that aren't necessarily formalized and presented in any way, but that's the type of measuring that teachers are trained to do as they're teaching, as they're instructing, and then responding in real time. And all of those, factor into these instruction decisions that are being made by educators. So it's a standardized score is a snapshot, a screenshot of a moving picture in some ways.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Stinson and board members. At our action meeting on the 28th, the superintendent's report will also include the monthly construction report, and that will be provided by our Chief Operating Officer, Myron Thompson. If he has nothing to offer at this time, I will turn the agenda back over to Chairman Murphy.
Thank you, Dr. Helm. Next on our agenda is the approval of routine matters. As we all know, we've been meeting quite a bit, so we have several meeting minutes to approve. And at this time, a motion is in order to approve the minutes of the May 24th, 2021 special board meeting, the May 24th, 2021 regular board meeting, the June 2nd, 2021 special board meeting, the June 3rd, 2021 special board meeting, the June 4th, 2021 special board meeting, and the June 9th, 2021 special board meeting of the Fayette County Board of Education. You don't need to repeat all that, but is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes as just read.
Motion by Board Member Green, a second by Board Member Spires. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. And at this time, I'll turn the agenda back over to Dr. Helm.
All right, thank you. You all have got to stop meeting so much. That's a lot of minutes. No, we thank you again for your time and for your service. The next item on the agenda for the June 28th meeting will be all of our consent items. So our chief financial officer and Mr. Thompson are available if you have any questions about the awards of bids and proposals this evening. If there are none.
Well, I had one quick question. Mr. Thompson, is there some change about the flooring at Tates Creek High School that I see? I'm not good at reading these change orders. Are we talking about changing the type of flooring?
Board Member Jones, do you have the page number for the agenda item at hand?
It would take too long.
Okay.
It might take me 30 minutes to find that.
Why don't you let Mr. Thompson get back to you with that information? Will that be okay?
Let me see if I can pull it up.
You're muted.
Of course, that'll be fine.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, the next item will be, there's a placeholder, as always, for finance accounting, and Rodney Jackson will be available to present that information. Next, if you have any questions this evening about the special and other leaves of absences, Rodney Jackson is available to provide a response to that as well. If nothing there, we have 8 construction-related consent agenda items. And Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Thompson, is available again. There's 8 items.
And Mr. Thompson, I believe it's on page 46 is what Board Member Jones was referring to.
Correct. And what happened here, Board Member Jones, the supplier of this is going out of business. So there's no change, no cost to the district. We're simply changing the supplier. There's no changing to the materials. It's just basically swapping out a vendor.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Chair Murphy, I have one question for Mr. Thompson. On G9, the approval of a waiver about not having interior or exterior windows, do we anticipate that that waiver will be approved?
We do. The Department of Education is fairly flexible with us in these things, and we've provided, I think, justification for why we have to go this manner or requesting this. So I don't anticipate any issues with them on that. If for some reason we do not get the waiver, we will be following back up with you, the board members.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Now I've lost my place. I think that's it. So next on the agenda, we have 9 items for your consideration and action this evening. And again, we try not to bring a lot of action items to the planning meeting, but sometimes we get items that are time sensitive and we have no other choice. So the first item is the certified evaluation plan. And Human Resources Director Jennifer Dyer is here to provide you with information as we seek your approval this evening.
Good evening, board members. Thank you, Dr. Helm. We are just the Certified Evaluation Plan Committee is made up of 50% administrators, 50% teachers, as you know. And earlier in the year, for the year of COVID, we came to you with a request to alter the plan for this one particular year. So now we are bringing this plan back forward to reverse any of those changes that we made for this one year. So the only effect that we really had was on the number of observations that were required for the administrators for the teachers during the year. And so we are requesting for the 21-22 school year to go back to what we were pre-COVID, which is 2 observations for our non-tenured teachers, a full observation for our tenured during their summative year, and then a mini on the tenured teachers for their non-summative years. So that's really the only changes, is just to revert back to the previous plan. And we do need to send it to Kentucky Department of Education for their final approval. That's why we're asking for it to be approved this evening.
Any questions, board members?
Chair Murphy, if I can just make a comment that I really appreciate the thoroughness and transparency. I shared this with Dr. Helm earlier. I really like this plan. I'll just put it, I think it's very well thought out. As an employee, if I was a teacher, I would really appreciate this. And also if I was administrator, I would appreciate the guidance. So I just want to share that I really appreciate the work that's behind this and the thoughtfulness.
Thank you so much. I'll share that with the team, the committee.
Thank you, Board Member Green. Any other questions? If there are no further questions, a motion is in order to approve the certified evaluation plan for the 2021-2022 school year. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A motion by Board Member Jones. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Green. We have a motion and a second on the certified evaluation plan approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Ms. Dyer.
Thank you all.
And thank you, board. And Ms. Dyer is up again, so we won't let her leave. It is the professional leave, speaking of leaving. Ms. Dyer?
sorry. There's just a few small items. One of them is a post approval, which again is the reason why we are bringing it forward this evening, but there's only, I think, 3 little items on this one.
Any questions for Ms. Dyer on professional leave? Hearing none, a motion is in order to approve the professional leave as indicated. Is there a motion?
We'll make a motion to approve the professional leave as indicated.
Motion by Board Member Green. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Jones. Questions on approving the professional leave. Any discussion? Hearing none, the motion is approving professional leave. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you, Board. Thank you, Ms. Dyer. Our next item is for extended trips from principals. And there are several students who, through the McKinney-Vento program, will be taking some trips this summer. And we've got some athletic and other extracurricular activity requests. It's kind of nice to be returning a little bit of normalcy, if you will. We still have to be careful, but we've got a few. And so we're asking your approval this evening, and we do have our school chiefs here if there are any questions.
Can you just real quickly remind everybody what McKinney-Vento is, so that if anybody's watching at home and or some of our board members may not be aware?
Right. In fact, one of our board members did say, "Who's McKinney-Vento?" McKinney-Vento is a special program that provides support for students whose families may find that they are homeless or in need of a secure housing. And so we try to make sure that we provide them with a consistent schooling, and we go so far as to go and pick them up wherever they may be living to ensure that they can continue attending the same school. So I think our district does an excellent job with that. And that falls under student support, and they just do a marvelous job.
Dr. Helm, I think I cut out on everybody.
Did I zone out? Did you not hear me?
I hear you. I don't hear Tyler.
I hear you. I don't hear Tyler. He looks frozen.
I think he is frozen. Oh,
It's federal. It's a federal law that was passed several years ago that makes sure that we provide services to our homeless students, and so one of the ways is field trips and other activity. I mean, to keep their to help further their education. So,
thank you, Ms. Green. It may be on you to take over if he's frozen.
Okay. So did he? Okay, he's gone. All right. So here we go. So I think we are ready to hear a motion to approve the request for the principals from the principals for the extended trips. Do I hear such motion? A motion is made by Board Member Spires. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Jones. Is there any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving the request from the principals for the extended trips, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. I think the motion passes 3-0.
I'm back, Board Member Green. I'm sorry about that.
Well, thank you for
It's
joining
4-0.
us. 4-0. Thank you. And I will pass it over to you.
Sorry about that. This is not a good night for anybody's technology, I think.
Looks like we're all being challenged this evening. All right, thank you, board members. Our next item is for your consideration, is the approval of a facility rental with Bluegrass Community and Technical Center. As we shared with you during our budget presentations, this is going to result in a significant savings for the district. So at this time, we've got High School Chief James McMillan and our Chief Operating Officer Myron Thompson that are both available to answer questions and to offer additional information. So Mr. McMillan.
From the MOA, we've had the STEAM OMC programs on the Cooper campus located right there in front of Kroger Field. Working with Myron Thompson last year, we started the process to not only try to save the district some money, but also to shift where we were housing that program more to, as you guys have watched BCTC sort of grow out there, we want to be where the action is. We want to be where the programming is being created. And we obviously want our students to have that college experience. That's part of the whole program when you look at OMC and STEAM. And so as you can see from the MOA, we are requesting this rental of that of some rooms and some office space on the BCTC campus on Newtown.
Excellent. Any questions, board members? Okay, hearing none, a motion is in order to approve a MOA with BCTC to rent space on the Newtown Pike campus for Opportunity Middle College and STEAM Academy. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A motion by board member Spires. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by board member Jones. The question is on approving the MOA with BCTC. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you, board members. Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Our next two items deal with contracts that we're asking for your approval this evening. And so I'm going to turn the next two items over to Senior Director of School Leadership, Sharonda Morton, to talk about BLA, the curriculum there, and then a contract with JMD Consulting. Ms. Morton.
Good evening, everyone. It is time for us now to renew our contract with BLA for our curriculum. They are, the curriculum itself is aligned with our standards. It is part of what we use to provide services for our children within the school. It's just like any other classroom curriculum. It's been very valuable for our students. It also has, it's tried and true, Florida Virtues, who we have the contract with. And this is just an annual event that we do, that we have with them. The Florida Virtual is evidence-based, and it has a great remediation, as well as it allows us to help our students, our GT students, to accelerate above and beyond. Because it's open, you can continue to move as you grow and as you learn throughout the process. So we've had a great partnership with them so far. Our students are growing and doing an exceptional job. I'm sorry, Dr. Matthews is traveling today, so I am standing in on her behalf. And also that is the reason for our renewal of this contract. Any questions?
Ms. Morton, you did say, because I think we had a question before, that the Florida Virtual is really, we're using their platform, right?
Yes,
that
we are.
the curriculum and the material is really ours. Okay.
Those teaching and learning was very supportive and helped us to write the curriculum and to align it to our standards, to our Kentucky standards, and where there are areas that may have gaps, because with any program, you're going to find that our teachers were able to write and supplement in those areas. So yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board members? Board member Jones.
What is the length of this contract?
It is for the year.
For the upcoming school year?
Yes, sir.
And is this expense something that can be charged to the ESSER funds or ESSER sources?
Possibly, we could probably consider that, Board Member Jones. We have not, the ESSER team has not discussed it, but it's something we can do, and we could probably get back with you.
I thought I understood that the Florida Virtual curriculum was a lot more expensive than this last time this came before the board.
And it was, because when we purchased it last year, we purchased it for every pupil because we were just starting out. But as a result of our numbers being lowered, and we're servicing about 900 to 1,000 students in VLA, that cut the price significantly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Morton, on that note, were we able to recover any savings from last year, or do you know?
No, I'm sorry. I would have to look that up and kind of get back to you about that.
Okay, that's fine. We can take that for the record. That's okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions, board members? Okay, hearing none. At this time, a motion is in order to approve the renewal of the virtual curriculum program at the FCPS Virtual Learning Academy. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A motion by board member Spires, a second by board member Green.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah, second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, the question is on approval of VLA curriculum. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Okay, the next one's mine also. It's JMD Consulting. With our CSI schools, we had a contract with Cambridge Education for that, and they provided support for our CSI schools. As a result of the company itself, it is no longer going to carry Cambridge Education as one of their subsidiaries. But what they have done is they have now passed the company on of that portion of the company, and they're supporting Dr. Dukes and those members of the team as they continue to provide services. So they had to change the name of the company because Cambridge contract ends with a district. It's the same group of people who will be providing the services. Dr. Julina Dukes, it will be the same support personnel that she will have, and it's not any difference. It's just the same name. And they're going to be with us until September 30th, so they're still providing services and still working with the schools. They're just changing their leadership.
So clarification, I think, oh, sorry.
I was just going to ask if there were any questions. Go ahead.
So Cambridge is not offering this service anymore, or is not existent? I'm a little.
Cambridge Education was part of the Mott McDonald Incorporated company. And so it's had a change of leadership in that part. It's a company that has this multifaceted. Cambridge Education was one of the subsidiaries of the company. They're no longer carrying that part of their company. And so they encouraged Dr. Dukes because she was the person that was actually in charge of it. She ran that part of it, of the company. And as a result, they're supporting her through this, and they encourage her to continue, but under a different name, under a different title. They're just no longer doing it themselves, but it's the same people doing the same job, providing the same services, working with their schools. It's just now JMD Incorporated.
And it's the same contract we had with Cambridge. It's just.
Contract does not change, and none of that changes.
So it's cost neutral.
Cost neutral. It's so they can continue to provide the services under their new name.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, board members?
So the Cambridge company is getting out of this business. Do we know why?
When I spoke with her, it's because the company has just decided it wasn't just Cambridge Education. It was, like I said, it was under a bigger umbrella. And for whatever reason, it's under new management now. And that was just one of the areas that they decided not to continue. And for whatever reason, I'm not sure, Mr. Jones, but that was what they shared with me.
So is Ms. Dukes an officer in the company or the owner of the new company?
She's the owner of the new company. She'll be leading the work under JMD.
Okay.
And she was doing Cambridge. It's just, it's not under that umbrella. It's now hers officially.
And so on the signature page, it lists the schools, and out beside each one, it has JMD Consulting POs set July 1 through September 30th, and it has some numbers that I don't know what those are. 4.5, 9.5. What do those numbers mean?
What page is that, Mr. Jones?
I'm going to have a lesson in how to get these page numbers. This is page 14 of the contract.
14 of the contract. Okay, let's see.
And it's right above the signatures where Ms. Duke signed it and you signed it.
Sorry.
That is, it's page 212 of the
Agenda.
agenda.
It's the days that are left to serve on the contract, Mr. Jones. For each school, Arlington has 4.5, Coventry Oak 9.5, Harrison, is that what you're saying, 2.5? Those are times in PD and so forth that they have remaining on their contract with them. And the teams come in and they're with them several days. It may be 5 people, maybe 4 people, and they come in to provide PD and they're in those schools for those days as a team.
So they're charging us in the neighborhood of $2,000 a day?
It depends on what services the school has contracted with them because it varies.
Okay. And this is for a total of $108,000.
Right, and this was already written into their contract with them. This was.
And so this is the completion of the original contract, which would have been in the neighborhood of what, 400,000?
Yes.
And can you tell me?
It started in 2018, so this has been since about 2018.
So is that 400,000 a year since 2018?
Probably total. Just again, it depends on what services the school and how they use their funding.
So the 400,000 then came out of what funding source?
It came out of their money that they were allocated from the state.
For school improvement?
For school improvement, it's being CSI.
Okay. And can you, or Ms. Dyers, can you recall why the district decided to go with an independent contractor rather than using the services of KDE for this, which would have been at no charge? Is that right?
This is true, but we actually put in a RFP, and at the time that was what our superintendent wanted us to do, look beyond. And we put out an RFP, and it was for anyone that wanted to, and this was the company that scored the highest and we determined was able to meet our needs.
And if I can interject, if I'm not mistaken, this company was actually under contract before the state issued the information about turnaround and CSI. The superintendent had actually realized that there were some schools that were struggling and asked this company, Cambridge Education, to come in and do a audit before the state actually offered its services. And I think he decided that since they had already come in and done the audit, that it would just, and we had that opportunity. If you remember, when the state put out the guidance, each school district had the opportunity to either use an outside company or to use the state. And since we were already using Cambridge and they had already done the audit, it was determined that for most of the schools, if I'm not mistaken, there were a couple of schools in which the state did do the audit. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was Mill Creek and Harrison. And then Cambridge did the audit and then the follow-up, helping to write those turnaround plans with the other schools.
Yeah, we had a really brief window to write all these turnaround plans. And I think what was really unique is we did not write the same turnaround plan for every single school. But just like this board met a lot in the past few weeks, I think Tyler can remember that we were meeting that April, we were meeting all the time because we'd meet like on Monday and hear the data, and then on Wednesday make the plan. I mean, so we were having 2 and 3 meetings a week because we had such a small window to get all these turnaround plans. But the use of Cambridge was brought in because we were already, like Dr. Helm said, we had brought them in on the forefront. And one thing that would kind of make Superintendent Koch frustrated sometimes is he could see a school struggling, but he couldn't do anything just yet. It's like sometimes you almost have to let them hit CSI level to be able to get the funding and to get the sort to get what you need. And that was just something frustrating to him. So he did bring Cambridge in, and we were really happy with them. And since they already kind of hit the ball rolling, we went. But like it was said, we did use KDE for part of it as well. But I've heard really positive feedback about Cambridge from all the schools that have worked with them and stuff. So I feel very comfortable with this, even though it isn't, but it's the same people. But if others have other questions or less comfortable, I want to make sure that everybody's comfortable with this before we move forward.
Well, I mean, the feedback's important. I haven't heard any feedback, but I would be more interested in some quantifiable results, some improvement that we can measure. Do we have any?
Well, I think the fact that 5 of our schools got off of CSI that first year, is the best data you can have.
That would be a very good one.
Yeah, 5 of them will come out of CSI status.
Okay, so all but 2 of them are out of CSI?
Well,
Yes.
actually,
We don't know yet.
yeah,
Okay,
I think
Doctor.
there's just 1 left, but yes, the majority are out.
Yes, 1 was left in CSI status at that time.
Okay. So then this whole matter then would be revisited after the state assessment scores come out in the fall. Is that right, Ms. Morton?
Yes, and we actually are, work very closely with our schools, but yes, it will be. And one of the things about Cambridge is that we liked about them is that even when this contract is over, we can still continue to work with them if that's what we would choose to do. And they can continue to provide services and support not just our CSI schools, but they also have supported many schools throughout the district. They've not just been relegated to them, but folks have, a lot of our schools have realized their value and have also used them in their schools to help support them and their staff in many ways.
Well, so we will continue this conversation. I mean, I don't know that we have any other choice but to go on and approve this, but I feel like that when we get to the fall and we get our new superintendent in place, it would be a good time to revisit. Because to me, this is the most important work that the school system is doing. I mean, this is it. And if we've hit a home run, then I'm the last person in the world that wants to criticize that. So if it's understood that we can talk about it again in the fall, then I'm fine with it.
Yes, and I think the other thing too, I mean, it's all a blur, but when we did do this, there was a lot of discussion about going with KDE, going with Cambridge. What can our staff do internally? What support do they need? I mean, I remember at our regular board meeting having a very extensive conversation before we approved Cambridge's contract. And then, like I said, we had just ongoing meetings about every single one of these schools. And, we developed a different plan for every school. And I think, all but 1 came out, and the 1 saw substantial growth as well. So we're headed in the right direction. So I think, but I agree, we always need to reevaluate and make sure, especially because things change and situations change. So yeah, this will be an ongoing conversation, but.
Well, could we ask Ms. Morton that Ms. Stinson provide us with the breakdown of the MAP data for these schools?
We can.
Okay, thank you.
And also the 1 school that remained with the status only missed it by a 1/10 of a point. They were that close, and we just that close. So it could have been all of them, and they're going to be out. I know they are. They have a dynamic leader, and the work is continuing on, so they will be out also. But yes, we can ask. Ms. Stinson is still on here, so we can do that.
And at the end of the engagement, Ms. Morton, there'll be certain deliverables, right, from the consulting company that we'll be able to review. Is that correct?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions, board members? Okay. Hearing none, at this time, a motion is in order to approve the transition of support from Cambridge Ed to JMD Consulting through September 30th, 2021. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A motion by board member Spires. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Green. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, the question is on the transition from Cambridge Ed to JMD Consulting. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you, Board. Our next item is a procedural item that occurs annually. And Steve Hill, our Director of Pupil Personnel, is here to officially get your approval on the closing of the 2021 instructional calendar.
That's right. I'm bringing you a year that we're ready to close the book on, and so we're excited to do that tonight. This is, like Dr. Helm said, and good evening, Board, by the way. Can everybody hear me? I'm just checking my mic because the problems. Very good. All right. I felt like I was staring into space. Maybe I wasn't sure. This is a procedural thing that we do every year. It's for end of the year reporting that we have to do with KD as part of the reports that come out of the Pupil Personnel Department. So, Mr. Carty, if you could go to the next screen, please. Just a real quick brief of what our calendar highlights. We adopted this year, just to remind you, of the variable student instructional calendar, and that was back when we were in mid-COVID and trying to figure out starting school on time, going later. And in KRS 158.070, it allows districts who start school on the week of the 26th, essentially wherever that Monday lands. We started on the Wednesday. It eliminates the mandate of the 170-day minimum for the instructional, but it requires you to still meet the 1,062 instructional hours. So this procedure tonight is just to let you know that yes, we did start school August 26th, which allowed us to go 162 days of instruction, allowing us to get out May 18th. We did surpass the 1,062. We actually did that on the 158th day of instruction. So just to let you know that, so we actually have some banked hours there. And then if you'll recall, just a quick highlight, we took those 3 days in January to allow our staff. That was when we were trying to really determine, can we go back after Christmas and back in person? So we spent that time to really hone in on a lot of getting our schools ready and our instructional path ready and transition our kids back well to in person. And we put those days on the 14th, 17th, and 18th. So you'll see that arrow kind of pointing over to May. And then we had our snow day that everybody was wanting, if you remember, on the 16th, and we took that day, the 18th of March. Is that 18th? That's 19th. Sorry, I can't hardly see on my own screen. That was the 19th, which was the CKEA day, and that would replace that day, which kept us at 162. And is there another one there, Mr. Carty? And so this is the final calendar that allowed us to get out on the May 18th, which we have. And so that's just for your board approval, and then we will submit this to KDE for final procedure. So.
Thank you, Mr. Carty, or Mr. Hill. Any questions? And Mr. Carty for operating the slide deck.
Absolutely. Mr. Carty is really the one you need to thank.
Any questions, board members? Okay. I think we're all happy to turn the page on to the 2020-2021 school year. So a motion is in order to approve the amended 2020-2021 instructional calendar. Do I have that motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the calendar.
Motion by Board Member Spires, a second by Board Member Green. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0, and we can put a ribbon on the 2020-2021 school year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Appreciate you. Our final item under the action items is a project that is going on, a redevelopment project in our distillery district. And General Counsel Shelley Chatfield is going to provide you some information about what's called a IRB, an industrial revenue bond. So, Ms. Chatfield.
Okay, I am so sorry.
it's a joke in the office that it's not really a Zoom meeting if I'm not having technical difficulties, and I'm having technical difficulties, but so I'm jumping on my phone. So yes, I want to tell you about, and I think you all are mostly aware of the Spiegel Heights project now that is taking place in the Distillery District. A developer is working with the city, and they are financing this development, which it sounds like a very exciting development in the east end of the Distillery District, which is largely undeveloped right now. And it will provide for a hotel and restaurants and all kinds of things to bring business into that area. But it will be funded by what is called an industrial revenue bond. And essentially what will happen is the city will own title to the property, but it will lease it back to the investor. And so there are no tax obligations. Now, the city and the developers, attorneys at Stokena wanted to make sure that the school district was not harmed by this situation. So what they have worked into the agreement is what is called a pilot, and that's payment in lieu of taxes. And we will be paid at 51 cents for every $100. So that the district still gets some money coming in, even though the taxes will be off the books. They are planning to take this before, I think they're going back before the council this week or next week. So they asked us to bring it to you all for your approval. And so that's what I'm doing here now. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, or I'll turn it over to Keena Go if I can. If you start digging in the weeds in finance, I might have to beg Keena to bail me out here.
I think it does go back before the council tomorrow. I think it's
Is that what it is? Okay. I apologize. Didn't know.
Any questions, board members?
Well, would we want to wait until the council has approved it?
No, I mean, the council is pretty much, I think they're pretty much on board, Mr. Jones. I think they kind of wanted just to make sure that the parties affected, Lextran, the library, and us, were okay with it and kind of on board. They've had a subcommittee looking into this. They've been involved in this for a while.
This is really the first one of these. And so I think what they're trying to do is make sure, this, am I correct? I mean, Keena and Shelley, you can chime in. This is the first one. And so I think one, we all learned some mistakes were made and maybe everybody wasn't brought in early enough. But two, we want to make sure that all parties that would be affected do have a say and are aware of what's going on before the council moves forward with it. And so I think that's really where they're at. And I know the developers have been meeting with Lextran and the library and the other, just to make sure that everybody is comfortable to move forward. And I think it sounds like everyone is comfortable, but we just need to continue to work on relationships as we go forward.
And I think we have. I think we're in a good place. I think this has been a lesson for all involved. And I think that, yes, we're in a really good place going forward. Because as you said, I think they did one a long time ago in Lexington, but it hasn't been done in a while. And they are starting to use these more and more across the state, and certainly in Lexington now. So.
And just so everyone, I think, is aware, this did come before council, or was a few weeks ago, but they tabled it to make sure that all the stakeholders and all those impacted would be aware. But tomorrow is the last day for it to move forward, for it to actually go on the application process for this year and be done, whatever needs to be done by the end of the month or whatever. So tomorrow is really the last day this council can act.
And did I see that we had done a fiscal impact on this? That I haven't had a chance to read something that came across the email earlier today, but it looked like that someone had done some kind of a impact statement.
Yes, and it will be neutral, right? Or I see Mr. Koch is on there. I'll let you explain, because you can probably explain better than I can, Ms. Koch.
We did do an impact statement, and I left out a lot of the numbers and all of the things that it took to get us there in the email I sent to you earlier today. But the bottom line is that the district is being made whole with the proposal that is in the IRB. you know, but everything's a projection. They're using projected numbers for what they think that the facility is going to be worth when it's finished. But from everything that we have looked at, it's a good deal for us. We're not getting more money than we should, but we're not getting hurt.
Thank you. Any other questions?
And it is the recommendation of the superintendent, right, that this be approved?
Most definitely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we were very fortunate that they didn't just go on and act at the last meeting. We had some friends on the council that said, wait a minute, let's make sure the school board is okay with this.
Well, that's my understanding too. Are you calling for a motion, Chairman Murphy?
I am, if there are no further questions. If there are no further questions, a motion is in order to approve the pilot payment arrangement entered into between Lexington Fayette Urban County Government, LFUCG, and Astana LLC, with payments made by Astana LLC directly to the Fayette County Public Schools, beginning upon completion of the Spiegel Heights redevelopment project at the rate of 51 cents per $100 of the project's new assessed fair cash value. Board Member Jones, would you like to make that motion?
So moved.
Motion by Board Member Jones. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Green. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
go
ahead.
I was gonna say, I tried to unmute, but couldn't real fast. I just want to say thank you to everybody who really worked on this and really did dive in the numbers. I know I just want to thank our staff and thank the community leaders and thank everybody that really worked together to make sure that everybody was looking out for everybody and working together as a team.
Absolutely. Thank you, Board Member Spires. So on the motion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
All right, thank you, board. All right, those were all of our action items for this evening. Now we're going to move to the discussion items for this evening that will actually become action items for the meeting on the 28th. So well, some of them will. So we'll start off this evening with our policy update. And we have with us Katrina Kenman, who is the Director of Policy and E-Meetings. She's the one that kind of helped us to get our portal updated and do all the training there. And then also our General Counsel, Shelley Chatfield. They're going to review our policies and procedures, those that are that we need to update. This is considered first reading of these policies. And then you will be asked to approve them on the 28th. Now, you don't approve procedures, but you will be asked to approve the policies. So I will turn it over to Ms. Kenman and Ms. Chatfield.
I'm going to jump in first and just let you know, I sent you a complete set of these policies and procedures right before the beginning of this meeting via email. We discovered at the last minute that something happened in the transmission of I think it's the policies. I really don't think, I think it's the procedures, not the policies. But there was an error and somehow it transmitted. So I thought I'll just send you both sets again and we'll go from there. So we're not going back and forth and back and forth. I just wanted to let you know that at the beginning. This is part of your legislative role. This is you vote on policies, and then the procedures are what the staff does to enact your policies. So I'm going to hand it over to Katrina. We're so grateful for her. She's a great partner of ours and works diligently on these policies and procedures. So Katrina, I'll hand it over to you. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Shelley. Do you want me to share my screen with the originals, or how do you want to approach that?
I think that would be great. Katrina, whoever is hosting this, could you give her sharing ability?
All set.
Thank you.
Okay, let me see if I can.
And we'll try not to go through every single one because there are a lot, but certainly if you all have any questions, let us know.
Okay, that's the procedures. Okay, do you see legal status of the board 01.1? Okay. Real quick, you're going to see many policies excuse me, referencing Bostock versus Clayton County, Georgia. This was a U.S. Supreme Court discrimination hiring decision. So we are recommending that you add the language under your federal notice of non-discrimination. It basically just says that sex includes sexual orientation or gender identity. You as a district were already doing that on your own, but we moved the language up here to make it clear that as part of Bostock, general sexual orientation or gender identity is included as part of sex. So there's, I think, 5 or 6 of these policies that reference that. The next one, House Bill 331, removes the ability of the commissioner or the state board to remove a local school board member from office. So now to be removed from office, it's just like any other elected official in Kentucky. And so that just changes the language down here, that only board members can be removed by action taken by the Attorney General.
I think you want to advance your screen, Katrina.
Is it not moving?
We're still on legal
status, but oh, that's weird. Maybe you all are,
Your cursor moving, but
maybe I'm not showing the right screen. Let me stop my share and start over. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Is it moving now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, sure. Technical difficulties. Board records, House Bill 312 amended multiple areas of the Open Records Act, and it changes the whole process and format for parties to request open records from the district. So while you can't require a particular form, the Attorney General is supposed to be creating a form. And I actually got to see the first draft today, and there will be a public hearing on that coming up. But all these go into effect on June the 29th, the laws do, unless they were had an emergency clause. So there will be a form coming for folks to request district records. The biggest change was that it now defines what a resident of the Commonwealth is. And when we get over to the procedures, I'll go into that a little bit more in detail. But basically, you're going to have to display on the district's website, whoever the custodian of records is, their email address, and phone number for folks to be able to reach out to that person. In general, it's the board secretary, but this change also allows for there to be a designee to be the records custodian to address any of these open records requests. So as I said, I'll go into a little bit more detail when we get to procedures. Equal employment opportunity, it's just another Bostock. Health and safety, OSHA regulations require districts to report certain injuries and deaths, and that has to be reported to the labor cabinet, and there are some timelines for reporting that. So we included it in your safety policies for both certified and classified personnel. Harassment discrimination, not only did we add the Bostock language, but this was a district requested draft due to the Office of Civil Rights. So I don't have a lot of information on that part of it. So if you have questions as to why those changes are made, those need to be directed to Shelley. But we did update the Bostock language in both the certified and the classified harassment discrimination policies.
Well, can we hear that explanation now since we're on this topic?
I'd be glad to. I'll jump in here. This has been, I think, 5 or 6 years ago. We had a report to OCR about an incident that happened at one of our elementary schools. We promptly responded. Frankly, they came back and made some suggestions about training and some policy suggestions, and then we didn't hear from them again for about until recently. I kind of forgotten about the case. And they said, oh, by the way, we think that you need to include some other things in your harassment and discrimination policies. So these are really, that's language that came from OCR. And of course, we always want to be compliant with OCR. It's not anything that's unreasonable. It just is fleshing out some of our harassment and discrimination policies.
Retirement. This was a change that only impacts members of the teachers' retirement system. House Bill 258 creates a foundation benefit for members who become members of teachers' retirement on or after January 1 of 2022. So instead, unused sick days right now get carried over and paid out at a certain amount, where now these unused sick days for those newer members may be paid out into this foundational benefit and put into this supplemental benefit component. And I will be honest with you, I'm not a finance person. So this language is just straight out of the statute. It created 2 new sections of KRS, but we just put that in here so that folks that get hired after January 1, 2022, they know that they're on a different tier with the way that the unused sick days may be paid out. Here's another Bostock. This is for classified employees, classified health and safety. Your classified version of the harassment discrimination policy with those same changes that was in the certified. Budget planning and adoption. The 21-22 budget bill includes an exception for a working budget with a minimum reserve of less than 2% that expires June 30th of 2022. So basically we just, it had been allowed for 2021. So we just took that out and made it for the 2022 school year as well. District accounts. Several auditors have told us or told districts that if the board is going to use electronic funds transferred, if the district is going to use that, the board needs to authorize it in policy. So we just came up with the language that it needs to be properly approved, just like any other expenditure, and that the schools will follow the Red Book, which is the accounting procedures for school activity funds, any other applicable laws and regulations. Legal, this one's Senate Bill 171 amended the KRS to allow investments to exceed a 40% of the total money invested unless it's in a mutual fund as described below. So you already had an investment policy and it just basically adds this one sentence for that one. Sometimes we put language in and forget to take it back out. So the 2018 budget bill had all these requirements that the district had to submit reports to LRC. All that went away when that 2-year budget expired. So we're just removing this language. The bus driver regulation 702 KAR 5080 changed several policies. So it calls it now school bus drivers instead of just bus drivers. If they're on the influence of alcohol or any illegal drugs while on duty or with driving responsibilities that same day, they'll be dismissed from employment, but with due process. And they can't be eligible for reemployment in a safety sensitive student transportation position for 5 years. So we just updated the language to match the regulation. Now, they are required to have first aid and CPR training now. So it's all bus drivers, student transportation technicians, and employees that have an occasion to transport students. So they have to have basic first aid and CPR training, either by the American Red Cross or equivalent training that can be verified. And then that same reg change finally made it so that the bows and arrows for the archery teams could be transported on the same bus. The bows can be up with the students. The arrows have to be down underneath the bus.
Our archery students will be very thankful. That's a complaint.
I'm sure.
So much, but I'm glad that we got that.
Yep. So it, and it just cleaned up a little bit more language from that regulation. This next one, basically, they rescinded a regulation that there were two. There was the federal requirements and state requirements for your school nutrition employees and their training and education. And the repeal of this just makes it so that they have the responsibilities that are in federal regulation, and you don't have to worry about which was more stringent anymore. So that just removed that regulation. Graduation requirements. This is a big one because in 2020, Senate Bill 158 made it clear that the district, if you wanted to make higher graduation requirements, you can do that. You've always been able to do that if you want to go above the 22. But you cannot require a student to get a minimum score on a statewide assessment to graduate from high school. And so then the Kentucky Board of Ed had to promulgate regulations. So this brings this requirement in line with both the statute and the regulations. That was just a little typo we cleaned up right there. The first year, they didn't add English to the language arts. I don't know why, but they did here. And then all of these additional qualifiers that students used to have to graduate have all been removed. So thank goodness it took this from like a 10-page policy to closer to like a 6-page policy. So that was really basically the only change there. And you'll see this related procedure 912 AP 25. I'm going to talk about that when we get over to the procedures. Here's another Bostock. While that was an employment discrimination case, we highly recommend having that same language for students because the feds are looking at all of their regulations that could be impacted by this. And so while, as I said, you all already had that language, but we put it back up here under sex again. Student medication, what they are doing in the General Assembly in general, they're trying to take out trademark names, like EpiPen or GED. A few years ago, they changed it to just a general high school equivalency program. So now instead of EpiPens, everything is injectable epinephrine devices. So any place that you had auto injectors or EpiPens, that's just a change in terminology. Here's your OCR for students, the harassment, discrimination, same language pretty much that's in the employee policy. And then the student disciplinary process. Senate Bill 1 in 2019 required districts on or before July 1 of 21 to adopt a plan for your trauma informed approach in schools. That same requirement made the department come up with a toolkit and then the board to have a trauma informed discipline policy by July of 2021. So basically, and we talked to KDE about this and we're on the same page here. We basically said, you're going to follow their toolkit to design your plan, and the policy will be trauma informed based upon that plan that you adopt. And there's the statutory reference there. This was a district initiated request for a change in the way that the holidays and vacations are, I guess, spelled out based on when you start your work. If you start, prior to the 16th, but after, another time. So it's just, this was requested by district personnel. Because of the educational benefit component, we went back and looked at 6 sick leave policies for certified employees for any retirement language. And while we were in there, we just found this death benefit language that it's still there, but that's between the employee and TRS. It doesn't necessarily need to be in your district policy. So we recommended removal of that language. This is the holidays and vacations for classified. We also had a request by the district to make it very similar to your certified evaluations, that when you do classified evaluations, you did with the less than 4 years or the more than 4 years, and how often that those need to be done. So that's just cleaning up some language there. The course code requirement, this was a district requested draft that they just make sure that it follows the Kentucky academic standards and supports college career readiness. Gifted and talented, this was also a district request, and it's mostly just changing some titles. Grading, the grading scale for middle and high school, this was a district request to change that. Your gifted, talented, district-wide magnet school programs, and just defined kind of what that criteria was, move some language around. A lot of the language is still here, it's just in a different place. So it's down here now. And that's it for the policies. Let me stop the share. And try again for the procedures real quick. Can you all see?
Yes.
Inspection of board records.
And this may come up in proceed. I'll hold off until we get to.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So basically, this is the House Bill 312 that changes the inspection of board records. So basically, it defines what a resident of the Commonwealth is. You have to post at the regular working hours at the main office, and to just have a place for you all to fill this in, because if this information changes, that way, you know, we don't have to take it back to the board every time. You all can just update it. What the fees for copies are. Now, the application now has to be signed, has to include the applicant's name printed legibly, include a mailing address and an email address if applicable, and then include the statement in which the applicant is a resident of the Commonwealth. It also extends the response time from 3 business days to 5 business days. So that gives folks at the district a little more time to get those together. That excludes weekends and holidays. If they're going to be denied or exempt, then that is spelled out in the Open Records Act as well. They can inspect them during regular office hours, and this commercial purpose language was already in the existing procedure that we rescinded. So here's the important part right here, what a resident is. It's defined in the statute. It's someone who lives in the Commonwealth or a domestic business entity with a location in the Commonwealth, a foreign business entity registered with the Secretary of State, someone that is employed and works at a location in the Commonwealth, someone that owns real property in the Commonwealth, or individual or business entity that's been authorized to act on behalf of an individual or business entity in the Commonwealth or a news gathering organization as defined in KRS 189-635. So the designee that's going to be responding to these open records requests is going to have to, pay close attention to this piece as to whether or not the records would be responsive or not. And did you have a question there, Mr. Murphy?
It was about the gifts and talent policy
Oh,
changes.
okay. Well,
There's
I'm going to get down to those too.
Yeah.
So this is what the former language was. We just struck all of that and created the new form. The next one, this is just district training requirements. It just keeps growing and growing every year. It removes the one for the food service folks right here and adds the first aid CPR training for your transportation folks. Driving record violations and personnel actions, that same reg just cleaned up a little bit of language. If one of these things up here, they have to immediately report it if they are charged with any of those. This is the one I wanted to talk to you about that relates to graduation requirements. So in 2019, House Bill 378 revised the statute to require districts to award credit, including partial credit for all coursework satisfactorily completed by homeless students. So you've already talked about McKinney-Vento at the beginning of this meeting and how you all are already supporting those students. Then the Kentucky Board of Education had to promulgate regulations to go along with this statutory requirement. So those are in place now. And so basically it just states that the district's got to support homeless children and youth, and by awarding credit, accepting credit, allowing them to complete a course at no cost to the student before the beginning of the next school year. They get their diploma from where they transferred from, exempting them from other coursework and requirements imposed by the board that are higher than maybe where they came from. And so it spells out and says that the district has to have procedures in place for awarding credit for coursework satisfactorily completed. So that's where this came from. Here are the statutory and regulatory requirements and the federal requirement, and then it's a related policy to graduation. Student medication, this has also changed the injectable epinephrine language. The public records notice, we are rescinding this one because all of that language now is going to be over in Chapter 1 with the inspection of board records. This was just a district request changing a title. Same thing, fleet insurance, it just raised some amounts. And here's more gifted, talented, changes the title. And let's see. District-wide magnet school program and gifted education program procedures that were, requested by the district to match, I guess, your district practice. I can't really speak to this one, so this would be where if someone else needs to answer your questions on it, because this was district initiated.
Yeah, is this just, are there any changes in practice reflected in this, or what is kind of the overview, the justification on these gift and talented policies and procedures? Is it just cleaning up the practices a little bit, or do we have any details on that?
I think, can you hear me?
Yes.
I think it's both. So it is cleaning up some of the practices, and it in terms of titles and so forth. as you can see, but it also helps to clarify on sections that are in this, because this is a fairly broad, as you can see, AP. It includes gifted and talented. It includes the magnet programs as well. So they're looped, bundled together.
Is there anything that we need to, are there any changes that we need to make sure we communicate with families that would affect current students enrolled or future students who might be enrolled in any of these programs? Does it affect anything for those students?
I think if you'll go to number 5, Katrina, that is a clarification. It does have add clarity. I don't, maybe a little bit above in 1 and 2 and 3, but mostly it's number 5, where you'll see like the criteria, like see that liberal arts. That's just made it very clear. It's better spelled out this way.
Okay.
And then if you'll go down to the one that has the number 5 parentheses, I think that's the other one the board should, I want to bring that out to the board. Where is it?
Unless it looks like it may have gotten renumbered funny. I don't know.
Is that districts? Is that the Spanish English immersion programs at Maxwell? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, it's that one. Is it not? I'm sorry. It must not be
It's
number
on
5.
page-
Sorry. Okay,
Well-
it did get renumbered. Thank you. So you can see it adds some language about, the families.
It's page 30, Miss Kinman.
Well, I'm looking from a different document than you. I'm sorry. Mine aren't numbered.
Go ahead, Miss McNally. I'm sorry.
Right. So the criteria for the student.
Oh, here, I see.
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah. So the criteria for the students is, I think it's a little more clear, came from combination of helping with that from our, of course, my office, academic services, as well as the school chiefs, but most importantly from the school principals themselves who are listed there, helped with that wording to help clarify.
Okay.
Were there any, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, President Jones.
Well, were there any changes in the board policy that represent anything other than just cleaning up language and adjusting titles or something? Were there substantive changes in there? Because we went through that pretty fast.
No, I think it was mainly changing that title.
That's all it was.
Katrina, if you can remember.
Yeah, it was just changing the title. There were no substantive changes in the policy itself. I can pull that back up if you want me to.
Well, no,
okay.
That's okay. Since we were talking about magnet programs, I just wanted to make sure
right
that I think I kind of understand the changes in the AP, but I wondered if there were changes in the board policy. That's all I need.
I do want to say, Board Member Jones, I believe that since we have opened RISE, that is a new addition to the policy because it just opened this year.
Okay.
So you will see in that board policy, it lists the magnets, how they're selected. And so you will see new ones like RISE. And then we added Carter G. Woodson Preparatory Academy for boys K-1. So I do know those were new additions. And then I think the rest of that policy, Board Member Jones, was mostly about, it looks like it was mostly about the title change. Yeah.
Okay.
And it also clarifies the addition of district-wide, because I do know that we've had some questions raised about some school-based programs that would be policies promulgated by site-based councils versus falling under the purview of the district-wide policies. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. McAnally, may I ask a question about this? I think right here on 5. Sorry, it's like I want to
back
touch.
up. I'm sorry.
That's okay. On the 5, the one that had down a little right there about the Spanish immersion entries. I read this and so it says that students have to demonstrate Spanish language proficiency on a specific test And so I would assume those are children that are English language learners first, English speakers first, learning Spanish. So then what about the students that are Spanish speaking first and English language learners? What assessment is laid out for
Yes,
that?
so you can see that is also added in there. I believe it's letter C. Is that correct on this document?
Yeah, so it says demonstrates of similar language skills of English. So is that the same expectation that the opposite direction? Does that make sense? We expect English first speakers to show proficiency in Spanish at a certain level. So are we reciprocating it for the Spanish speaking children first, what we expect of their English language?
Yes, yes.
And so are they using the same test?
No, that I do not believe we will be using Apple. I have Dr. Youngworth on the line with us, but no, I think the Apple test is used to demonstrate your proficiency in the world language. So I don't think it would be for the English. No, we will try to use something that is similar. If we have to purchase something, we will, but we're going to be working closely with our principals on that. We actually have an assessment committee. Dr. Youngworth, any additional info?
Hello, everybody. Just to clarify, no matter what language you speak, you must demonstrate your Spanish and your English. So if Spanish is your first language, you will be demonstrating that through an assessment. And if English is your first language, you're going to demonstrate. So it's reciprocal on that way. I wasn't sure which way you were asking.
That is what I'm asking. But I'm asking if someone is a native Spanish speaker and they take an English proficiency test, that we're understanding that is being measured as a second language.
Yeah, well, yes, and at their particular grade and age level too.
Correct.
It's at their age level.
I think I'm just want to make sure that they are being tested fairly.
And it would be the same both ways. Yes, ma'am. Okay. It would be B and C would be the same.
And there was a concern raised, and I think we addressed this, and then this may be what Board Member Green is referencing as well. There was a concern raised in the spring about the language in the procedure on requiring students to demonstrate similar language skills in English. And I think we made a short-term policy or procedure adjustment. Does this current policy and procedure combination address that challenge going forward beyond the school year?
Yes,
do you all know what I'm referring to?
As far as I can state, yes, we believe that this helps to clarify.
Ms. Youngworth, I saw you were shaking your head. Do you have anything to add? Or?
No, what she said is correct, sir.
Okay.
And again, I just want to reiterate, all of the folks that are involved, you see the names of the schools listed there. Those leaders were, we worked closely with them to make sure that we got this right to help make it, as you said, fair. Any other questions?
To my one last question. So why on B, which is striped B, it's I, why do we have a specific test laid out for that one, but not a specific test laid out for the C?
As I said, or I think I'm following you. As I said earlier, we're going to try to use multiple data points, including tests that we already are required to give.
Okay, great.
Either by the district or by the state.
Okay, thank you.
And that's it for me. I don't have anything else unless you all have questions about our portion of the update.
Any-
you. Katrina.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna thank her for coming.
Yes,
Thank
thank you.
you.
I was going to do the same thing. So
Okay,
thank you.
good
Ms.
night.
She's like, I'm out of here.
Excuse me. Thank you, Katrina, and thank you, Shelley, for that. Board Chair, do you want to take 5 minutes? It is 10 minutes before the hour of 8, or do you want to push on? We have.
What's our consensus? Do we need to take a quick break, board members, or do you want to keep going?
How much time remains, do you think? We have another hour?
Well,
Thereabouts.
We should, well, I don't know.
We can keep going if somebody
No,
needs to.
look, if it's going to be more than 30 minutes, let's take a break. That would be my vote anyway.
Okay. We can stand it. We'll stand at ease. It's 7:51 my time, so we'll do 7:55. We'll be back at 7:55.
All right.
Thank you.
4 minutes.
Okay. Okay, are we back?
I think we are.
Okay. Doctor, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you. Well, we have put the 2021 instructional calendar to rest, and now it's time to talk about the calendar for 22-23. So we are really moving forward. So Mr. Hill is back and will talk to us about 22-23.
Good evening, board. And I know you've had a lot of things presented to you today, so I'll try to make this short. But as a normal procedure, we are planning a year and a half in advance. We do that just so those will know. For our partners in the community, a lot of calendars hinge on our calendars, such as University of Kentucky's, and not that they hinge on ours, but they're employees. And so we try to make this available to our community as quick as we can. So tonight will be the first reading, and then I will do another executive summary for the final calendar. If you could go to the next screen, please. One of the things that our board did actually before I got here, so I can't take credit for this, but it was actually one of the things that's asked for by many districts around the state, what are guiding principles. And it really, the reason for this is it's language that develops our calendar. It's consistent. It's something that our community can count on and kind of gauge where the days are going to land most years. This was developed and approved several years ago as part of the process. And so it's really dropping in days. And there's only a couple of decisions that we have to make yearly when looking at our instructional calendar. And again, our goal is to shoot for 177 instructional days in a normal year. So we've been able to do that for this calendar. The next slide, please. I do want to tell you, and this is an error of mine, in your board packet agenda, there's some changes. The screen you have in front of you is what will be presented in the next executive summary. I found it out, checked it out this morning. I just something in my gut, checked it out, and my day calendar had us at 174. So I had to add 3 more days into May to make it 177. So what you see in front of you is what will be presented in a couple of weeks for the final approval. I do want to point out a couple things. This is the earliest calendar because it's the first double-digit Wednesday of the month, which is the 10th of August for the year 2022. It also is that wonky calendar where the New Year's falls on the weekend, and again, Monday would be the recognized day for the New Year's Day. So I don't know if you recall, a couple of years ago that was an issue that came about, and so we have also set that day as a non-instructional day, part of our winter break. And then we will end the year with the 177th day on May 24th. And if you could go to the next screen, please. So highlights of this calendar, we start on the August 10th, we finish on the 24th, be 177 instructional days. All fingers crossed, everything's going to be normal. We'll be good to go. I think we will be. We statutorily, you have to build in within the just so you'll understand how the winter or the I don't know why I put that under the winter break has 11 days. Spring break is the 3rd through the 7th, and that statutorily we have 11 makeup days that have to be built in. That was from the 2020 year, 2019-2020 year, and it requires that you go back to 5 previous years of the highest year that you missed the most days. That happens to be, just to let you know, the year that we had to take 2 weeks off during the COVID to flip the district from, we didn't have NTI built into our system, so we had to take literally 2 weeks off because we could not go to school due to COVID, the onset of that pandemic. And so that is the year that we will have to build in 11 makeup days for the next 5 calendars. So just to give you that. So Again, this will be presented for final approval. You'll have a new executive summary and the final version of this calendar in front of you for the next board meeting. If I'll take any questions or comments from you at this point. And I want to thank Amy, Miss Green, for jumping in there and helping Miss Spires, who's been on this committee for so long, and I appreciate you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Green, for jumping on this committee. Real quick, when is the last day of the 2022 calendar?
The one coming up next year. Oh boy.
And I only asked because I just want to make sure the last time that we started on August 10th was summer that was only like 6 or 7 weeks. And so because we did like June something and it and then the next summer we had like almost 3 months, like we almost doubled. So I just
and that's the one it's going to set it on that Wednesday of the first double digits. So there will be years where it will benefit from it, or it depends what your perspective is of benefit. I'm looking for it on my desktop. I think I have it on my desktop in my office. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Whitney, it's May 24th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we still have a good summer. That's what I was really trying to highlight there. We're not getting out on June 12th and then coming back on August 10th or like we did the 1 year.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And I would just like to say thank you for everybody. This is such an inclusive committee, so I'm very glad to meet it, to be on it, and to meet everybody. I mean, there are individuals from all of the school levels, from transportation, certified, classified, and so it really listens to everybody's input on, the transportation schedule, making sure they have enough time to practice their runs and get back and forth. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of this, and it really is. It's a well-run machine there, Mr. Hill. Thank you.
Well, I genuinely appreciate your gift of time. I know it's not, you guys get asked to do so many things, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions, board members?
All right. Thank you, Steve and board. And we're going to move into another calendar. And so now we have Dr. Whitney Stevenson is going to talk to us about the preschool calendar for 21-22. Hopefully no one gets any of these calendars confused.
Yeah, so that's how I knew quickly it was May 24th because I had my calendar for next year in front of me. So good evening, everyone. And what I typically do every year is when Steve brings the calendars to the board, that I just bring the preschool calendar more as an informational item of what to expect. And so I'm glad to say we're able to move back to our pre-COVID calendar for our preschool students. So this is what it looks like. And we are going to call our transition days this summer, once school starts, our jumpstart days, to use that same language as the jumpstart week that's happening for those other transition grades prior to school starting. And then based on this calendar and then our pre-COVID calendars, it's 160 instructional days for preschool students. So that is what this calendar for next year reflects as well. Does anybody have any questions about the preschool calendar? We good? All right. So the next information that I would bring are I typically bring are the preschool classrooms for the next year. And so this is a 2-page document that you should have, but it just lists here all of the classrooms that we will have in the fall. Prior to COVID, we were typically adding a new classroom every year because of the growth we were experiencing. In fall of 2020, we were able to open Brenda Cowan School, and so we are not opening any new classrooms as of this fall. But Brenda Cowan will actually get to go face-to-face instead of virtually. So it is like that we're opening Brenda Cowan, which I'm very excited about as well. So this is it. And then Mr. Carty, if you just want to scroll down just to the rest to finish out the document. I couldn't smush it all on one page, so it ended up being 2 with all the information that I wanted to share with you all. Does anybody have any questions about the preschool classrooms for the fall?
I don't have any questions, but I want to make the new board colleagues aware. I know that I believe all of us are really big fans of early childhood education. And I think if we could all wave a magic wand, we'd probably all be for universal education. So I want to make sure that my colleagues understand too, one of the challenges we have for expanding preschools is actually the requirements for the buildings for our preschools, such as their separate playgrounds, separate entrances. There's a lot of, so it's not just as simple as designating 2 classrooms or a classroom in a building. There's a lot of other stuff that goes into that, which I would love to explore with all of you as we move forward. But I just want to make sure that everyone kind of knows the challenges that we face when we talk about expanding and adding classrooms, and why it's not just so simple. It's not just personnel in a space. There's a lot of other stuff that goes into it.
Yeah, so thank you, Ms. Spires, for sharing that, because typically when we do look at expanding, like once we have a typical year and our numbers have grown, we pull together a group of, you know, from operations, from transportation, chiefs, to talk about the best placement based on the information that we have for a unit for the next year, and all of those things that Ms. Spires talked about. Space in the building, you know, what it's going to look like. Is that where we're seeing an overflow of students from the year before that, you know, we could move into that school? So there are a lot of conversations that happen, and, you know, that kind of helps us determine where to go, because we are not at a place to, unfortunately, have the universal pre-K. We're just not quite there yet, but, you know, we continue to have those conversations on many levels.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Dr. Stevenson. Appreciate you. The next 5 items are all about job descriptions. And so here to give you some information. They're not all new job descriptions. Some of them are existing and we're just updating them. And she will give you all the details. So Human Resources Director, Jennifer Dyer.
Thank you, Dr. Helm and board members. I did omit the OTPT one, and I'm going to publicly apologize to Amanda Dennis right now that I missed those in this update packet. So I'll bring those to you all at another date. For those of you who are following along in the agenda, we are on page 379 of the short agenda today. And this one is involving 2 job descriptions in our gifted and talented education office. It is, again, not new job descriptions, just updates. The job description of GT Education Coordinator and the GT Education Instructional Specialist. It's updating our duties to better align and making sure we have our measures of success and our world language component. So those are 2 job descriptions related to gifted and talented. On page 384, we have 2 job descriptions related to our English Learners Office. We have an update of our district English Learner Program Liaison and our instructional specialist for English learners. Again, not new job descriptions, not new positions, just updates of current existing ones with updated language and the duties, as well as measures of success and the world language component. Any questions on either the GT or the EL before I move forward? I'm going to keep it moving. Don't want to be too fast, but we know you've all been here for a while. The next one is a new job description, but not a new job. So this is a new job description being brought forward to you of the Dropout Prevention Specialist. This is in our Student Support Office. This is a current existing position. It's just, it just needed to be totally revamped according to the support that this individual position is providing. So this is not a new job, but a new job description of Dropout Prevention Specialist. So it's very targeted services for those high school folks. The next one, which is on 392, is the Director of Grant Programming. This is one that was discussed in the meeting with the board when we were regarding ESSER funding. There used to be a position that was an associate director position that had some of these type of duties, but this one has been expanded. So it's a new job description, Director of Grant Programming, that will help have oversight and coordination of the federal, state, and local grant programs. So again, it'll be working collaboratively with all our departments in our schools, but it will provide that oversight that has been discussed as a need.
Ms. Dyer, may I interrupt and ask a question? Is this, so this person, a Director of Grant Programming, will they also be responsible, I'm looking through here, in drafting grant proposals, or is it just managing grant resources?
This one typically will be the management, that oversight piece. Our grants office really works with all of our departments and all of our schools on the actual grant writing and the acquisition of those grants. So I think that department would still lead that work. I am sure that this person, as we move forward, or this position, will work closely with that department and maybe bringing some more grants forward and looking for grant opportunities. But that happens in a lot of our offices. The Student Support Office is a champion for looking for grants and finding grants, like the AmeriCorps grant that we brought forward not too long ago to institute some extra support in the areas of tutoring and math and reading. But this program director certainly could take on some of that role in leading and finding those grants.
Thank you.
And then finally, in this packet on page 396, this is a job description for Associate Director of Student Support, Mental Health, and Social Emotional Learning. The Department of Student Support did have an Associate Director position at one time, but that has not been filled for a while. And as we know, and as you all have seen, there's been a lot of expansion in that student support, especially in our mental health and social emotional learning areas. And so we want to bring forward this job description that really reflects some of those new duties and new responsibilities in that expanded office. So this would be a new job description. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Dyer.
Thank you, Ms. Dyer. All right.
Thank you all very much.
The next item is we need to have the board approve the various positions, a list of positions, if you will, that are eligible to chair these special meetings, what's called a admissions and release committee. And we bring that to you this evening. And so Director of Special Education, Amanda Dennis, is going to give you a little bit more information about that. Ms. Dennis?
This is an annual requirement per our procedures so that the board affirms the various staff members who are approved to chair admission and release committee meetings. This list is not changed from previous years and recommending leaving it the same way it has been for the last several years. Any questions?
Thank you, Amanda. If there are no questions, we'll move on to the next one. Thank you so much. All right, our next two items are with our Student Support Office. The first one is a contract. When we had our 10-point safety investment plan review with the board on Wednesday of last week, you heard Mr. Adams talk about a screening tool. I think it's the Devereaux that would be used to enhance and to, really fine tune what students are needing. So he's going to talk with you a little bit about contract with Aperture Education. And then he's going to talk with you about the trauma-informed plan that you heard mentioned as Katrina was walking us through the updated board policy. So I will turn it over to Mr. Doug Adams.
Good evening. The Student Support Office is recommending the SEL screener called the Devereaux. It is a mini screener for 3rd graders through 11th graders. The younger students and the 12th graders can be done, but it would be with parent permission because it would require a more, it's a lengthier process for those those areas. This will help us look for internalizing and externalizing issues that may be going on, especially the internalizing things. And then it will allow us to offer tiered services at other levels, like tier 2 and tier 3. This is a part of the 10-point safety plan, comprehensive adolescent assessment section. Questions on that?
Thank you, Mr. Adams. One question, the contract lists, so the services would be the Aperture System K through 8 and then the high school package. So do we have the option later to expand to K through 2 and then 12th grade?
So the K through 2 is a little complicated because it would not, these are online, so web-based. So K through 2 would be a little more time consuming, and those elementary teachers are real stingy with their time, rightfully so. But we can look at that. We're just trying to keep something that will help us do things quickly rather than having to pull students out of the classroom. But we can look at that, and we will look at that.
So would it be an additional cost if we did expand that, or could it fall under this, the way this contract is structured?
I don't know the answer to that, but I can have that for you before the next meeting.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other?
So, yeah, I have a quick question. It says here that the purpose is to identify student SEL strengths and areas of need or growth. SEL is social emotional learning. Is that right?
Yes. Yes, sir. It also really, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
You go, no, you go ahead. I'm trying to understand what it is.
So it also helps look at resiliency. So we also look at resiliency skills and build upon those. So sometimes students may be feeling sad, or they may be feeling not so well, but yet they're not externalizing those issues. In other words, they're keeping them for themselves. So this questionnaire allows them to answer those questions and gives us some information. So that way we may be able to take that to a parent, and with the parent permission, we may be able to offer them some extra services at the next level of care.
Go ahead.
It's internal services at first, and then later on, if we needed external services for a child, then we could do that, or youth.
Okay, so are there any other examples of SEL strength or need for growth that you could talk to me about besides a student feeling sad?
Well, I mean, so it's going to look for depression, it's going to look for anxiety, it's going to look for feeling sad, blue. It's going to look for, you know, we all can list the students that are having externalizing behaviors and issues going on. It's the internalizing that we sometimes miss. So those type of thoughts, you know, could even be suicidal thoughts they may be having, or just questions they have about suicide. Those kinds of questions would come to the forefront based on that tool, and then we can offer services and make sure we intervene and help that student.
And so this assessment would be administered by whom?
I apologize, the doorbell rang.
I'll ask you, who would administer these assessments?
My understanding may be, and Mr. Adams, correct me if I'm wrong, that the staff will be trained in the programs and then they will be administered by staff. Is that correct?
The PBIS coach would be, in the SEL coordinator at each school would be the one responsible for organizing that and administering it via Chromebooks or via the computer lab. One of those two ways they'll do that. And it's about 20 minutes.
And parents would have to give their permission in order for it to be administered.
No. This would be just like a Brigance, just like a kindergarten screener. They would have to get permission if the instrument showed that the student needed something, then they would get permission before we move further for those services. This is just like the MAP test. This is just like the Brigance screening that we do at kindergarten. It's part of the SEL curriculum and SEL process, and the component number 5 of the 10-point safety investment plan that we were doing.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Other questions? We'll make note of the one question and we will get back to you, board members. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams.
Yeah. Mr. Adams, go on and do the trauma-informed plan, please.
So the trauma-informed plan, as you heard about in the new statute, it came out of Senate Bill 1, which eventually became the School Safety and Resiliency Act. We started trauma-informed care we're like I said, we try to lead the nation. We started in 2016 by working with the Center for Trauma in Children at UK, and we developed our own modules. We even have them online now, but we do live trainings. We have several train the trainers, I can't remember what she said last week, but we have several. And so our plan moving forward just continues that process and expanding that process into things like race-based trauma, for example. You have the plan hopefully in front of you, or that you can review, and let me know if you have any questions about it.
Thank you, Mr. Adams.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Mr. Jones, do you have a question? Because you're muted.
Was the plan included in the KSBA portal in those documents?
So no, the plan was a separate attachment.
Sent in an email?
It should be a part of the packet. I checked today to make sure it was, and was told it was. If not, I can email it.
Did everybody else get it besides me?
Mr. Jones, I'm looking in the portal now, and on the second page, there says attachment, and then it has an address to Google Drive, so you could copy and paste that to see it if that's where you're looking at your documentation.
So it is in the board portal.
It is with a link, so
Okay.
It's not. Yes, sir. Page 2.
I apologize. That was unintentional. It should have been an actual hard copy or physical copy. We'll get that corrected and get it to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Appreciate you. As Mr. Adams said, we continue to lead, or we are excited about leading with providing students with the supports that they need, especially after the 21-22 year that we have just had. Or excuse me, the 2021 year that we have just had. The next item on our list of items for you to approve, or two more things really, the pay date schedule for 21-22, and that is Mr. Rodney Jackson here to share that with you. This is again another procedural matter, the pay dates, which is very important, I'm sure, to everyone.
Thanks, Dr. Ham. Again, this is procedural. It happens every year annually. We usually get to you in May or June. As you know, we pay on the 15th and the last day of the month, unless the 15th or the last day of the month falls on a weekend or holiday. There are 2 days that seem like outliers. One is for Christmas, which is December 22nd, and the other one is March 25th before spring break. The reason we do it that way is because we want to make sure that we're customer service friendly and we have people here to answer questions. You don't want to have a payday when everybody gets paid and nobody here is answering a question that can cause a real big problem. So that's why those 2 dates are different than the regular dates. Are there any questions or concerns?
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. I don't think anyone seems to have any questions on that one. And then our final item under planning, which will then be for action, is the placeholder for the monthly financial reports. And Mr. Jackson will bring that to you at that time as well. The other items remaining are just informational. They are routine school activity, fund placeholder, personnel changes, budget transfer, interfund transfer report, and the position control document. Those are the final items, and I'll turn it back over to Chair Murphy, but I will mention that we do have a need to go into closed session this evening to discuss property.
Thank you, Dr. Helm. At this time, a motion is in order to make the agenda dated June 14th, 2021, on which action has been taken at this meeting, a part of the minutes as if copied in the minutes verbatim. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Board Member Spires. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Board Member Green. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. At this time, as Dr. Helm indicated, a motion is in order for the board to enter closed session pursuant to KRS 61.810, Section 1, subsection B, to discuss the future acquisition of real property for school facilities. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Board Member Spires. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Green. The question is to enter closed session pursuant to KRS 61.810, Section 1, subsection B, to discuss the future acquisition of real property for school facilities. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. It's 8:26 p.m. Please join me on the closed session Zoom link. I'll see you in there. Do we have everyone back? Yes. Okay. The board left closed session at 8:39 p.m. on a motion by Board Member Green and a second by Board Member Spires, and the vote was 4-0. There will be no action taken. And at this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this special meeting of the Fayette County Board of Education. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A motion by Board Member Spires. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Green. Questions on adjourning? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. We're now adjourned. Thank you all, and thank you to all of our presenters.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Evening.